So you add in loneliness, boredom, too much cash, drugs, and Trump derangement syndrome. That is a toxic stew of Hollywood paranoia.
Hello, I'm Phelim McAleer.
And I'm Anne McElhenney, and welcome to the Anne and Phelim Scoop.
Indeed. We want to welcome especially those people who've just joined the programme. We have lots of new listeners and viewers out there. For those who don't know, we're investigative journalists. We uncover stories they don't want you to know, from government corruption, the dark side of the environment, the truth about the abortion industry, the truth about the Me Too movement. We produce plays, podcasts, and many of them verbatim from the Ferguson, the truth about Ferguson. We did the Gosnell story. We did a top-selling podcast on Kermit Gosnell, a New York Times best-selling book on Kermit Gosnell, the abortionist. We did a wonderful podcast on the Kevin Spacey trial.
We did a number of podcasts that highlighted everything that's wrong with the Me Too movement, including a very impressive podcast, even if I have to say so myself, on the Kevin Spacey story, which you really should listen to, and on the Harvey Weinstein story as well.
Yes.
And we also did the My Son Hunter movie, by the way.
Which we're going to be talking about shortly. Let's play the trailer for the My Son Hunter movie. This is about Hunter Biden and his debauched, corrupt lifestyle as the bagman for the Biden crime family.
And it'll be more relevant when you see what's happening afterwards.
Yeah.
So I'll tell you what's going down.
You know who I am.
They told me you were VIP. All connected to the government.
What kind of a moron forgets to pick up his laptop at a repair shop? You're a Biden. Act like one. Everything he built, his life, I just ruined it all. I want to know everything that's on that laptop that can ruin my erection. My friends, it's time to party!
Didn't you know I'm taking control? I'm making an appearance and I gotta go, cause I get them dancing with their hands up. Yeah, I walk in and they go bananas. I'm a bad, yeah.
I'm an artist.
And they're cheering my
Tell me how I can help you.
I don't deserve help. Oh, I'm so sorry.
I've been through worse.
You're the smartest man I know. Thanks, Dad. I just wish I could speak some sense into you. I'll never forget Corn Pop. He was a bad dude. No joke. Dad, we were talking about suffering.
I can't seem to find anything but positive stuff on the Bidens.
Who's the point man for the foreign policy in the Obama regime?
Joe Biden. So it looks like you need $1 billion.
So the obvious next question is,
Where's Hunter? I can remember getting paid some money, but I can't remember what for. Well, my dad says we never discuss my businesses, period. Or my cut.
what's happening in there? Joe's in on it.
Party's over!
You had everything, Hunter, and you threw it all away. You hope the laptop will take down everybody with you.
Get out! China's not our enemy. They're not bad folks. I love my dad, and I just want to make him proud. I am the one who brings in all the deals. I am the one. Good boy.
There you go. Gosh, Lawrence Fox is wonderful in the movie, by the
Yes.
way. Absolutely amazing. And you can watch that film for free, and the link to watch the movie is in the show notes. So what's in the show today, Phelim?
Well, we have a very special guest, Anne. The only person who possibly knows more about Hunter Biden than we do, and still wants anything to do with Hunter Biden after his father left office. And you're about to find out why this person has a particular interest in Hunter Biden.
And talking of interminable court cases taken by megalomaniacs, we bring you a very interesting development in the case of climate alarmist Michael Mann, who is suing broadcaster Mark Steyn. There's been a big development.
A very interesting development. And another university that allowed itself to be taken over by radical anti-Semitic terror supporters. Maybe finding out that in Trump's America, there are consequences from allowing anti-Semitism to roam unchecked. And by the way, don't believe them. Don't believe these people when they tell you that Donald Trump is a threat to democracy. One European country, which we are very, very familiar with, has just banned a right-wing candidate who was favored to win the presidential election. They've banned him from standing in the presidential election. and no one seems to be concerned. We're concerned. We're going to tell you all about it.
And we also take a look at an Irish comedian who went to Lebanon for a terrorist's funeral. And the joke is really on him.
It's the kind of thing, of course, you do. Of course, as a comedian, you go to the Lebanon for a terrorist funeral. And LA Mayor Karen Bass sliced the fire department's budget, went to Ghana before the fire. But will we find out what was going on behind the scenes? We won't. We'll find out two things. We'll find out why the fire hydrants didn't work, but also we'll find out just what Karen Bass has done to cover up what she has done. So.
And if you ever wondered what college-educated men in the US sound like these days, the New York Times very helpfully provides the answer. It's hard to decide if the story is more frightening or just really hilarious, and you have to decide. And you really have to hang on to the end.
I don't know about this story now.
Phelim hasn't heard about this story. I just read it, and I thought I have to read this out and watch for Phelim's reaction to what college-educated men in America are like now. And by the way, by the time this story comes out, we're going to be just a few days ahead of St. Patrick's Day. We'll have, before our next episode, in the meantime, you'll have St. Patrick's Day. And we have a recipe from our archive that I wanted to share with everybody. And it's an amazing recipe. I highly recommend it. And
wait for that
at the end
of the show.
And we'll look at some comments from the show from last week and we'll read them out.
So now we go over to our interview with Garrett Ziggler. It's about the Hunter Biden story. As I said before, we did the Hunter Biden movie. Hunter Biden, the corrupt son of the corrupt Biden family. Kevin Morris, who you'll hear a lot about, is Hunter Biden's lawyer, one of his many lawyers. But we didn't know that at the time. Kevin Morris represents South Park in all their business dealings, all their entertainment dealings. And Kevin Morris arrived on the set of our movie, My Son Hunter, saying he was making a documentary for the South Park banner on Hunter Biden. And that sounded like a proper South Park thing to do, make a documentary about that. We didn't know at the time that he was Hunter Biden's lawyer. So he infiltrated our movie set, asked all sorts of questions. Completely unethical. He did that. So we're going to talk to someone now who knows both Hunter Biden and Kevin Morris very well. We're going to talk to Garrett Ziggler and look at why no one wants to be friendly with Hunter Biden anymore. So let's go over that interview we did just before we came on air. And now we want to bring you the latest news from the kind of disintegrating Biden family. It seems no one wants to be friendly to or to fund a bunch of arrogant, corrupt grifters now that they no longer have any power.
Shocking.
Nobody wants Hunter anymore. He's going broke. And since his father's pardon, he can't even get arrested. Boom, boom. That was Elizabeth's line there.
That's very good. Thanks for that, Elizabeth. We appreciate it.
Yes. His paintings are no longer selling to people who want to meet Joe Biden and bribe his son to curry favor with Joe. And Hunter claims he's so broke he's trying to drop a ludicrous lawsuit that he started. So we want to hear about this from the man who wants Hunter to settle his unfinished business. The defendant in the lawsuit, former White House aide Garrett Ziggler. So just to give you a bit of background about Garrett served as a policy analyst in the Office of Trade and Manufacturing Policy under Peter Navarro in the first Trump White House. Then he formed a not-for-profit, Marco Polo, and became somewhat of a Hunter Biden expert. And that's the reason we want to talk to him today, because he got into Hunter Biden's crosshairs like we did with the Hunter Biden movie. And there have been some very interesting developments in Hunterland that directly affect Garrett. So, Garrett, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me on. It's always a pleasure.
Great to see you.
So, it's good to see you guys.
Yes.
Thank you.
There's a lot. I don't know where to start here, Garrett, but let's start at the beginning. Tell us, how did you get involved with Hunter Biden and Kevin Morris? What led you there, and how did you get in? Tell us what led you there first.
So during the election fraud fight of 2020, Peter and I were one of the few people in the White House to recognize that the election was rigged. And through that, I got to meet Rudy Giuliani, who was the first person that the shop owner sent a copy of the laptop to. And Rudy, well, it's actually Rudy's tech person, because love Rudy, but he can't make a copy of a hard drive. He's from a different generation. And they made multiple copies, and I got one of them. And it turns out that I'm a huge nerd. It's part of the reason why Peter liked me, even though I was young. And I realized that this thing is one of the greatest stories of the 21st century, because there's over 200 gigabytes of material, as you know, every file type imaginable, PDF, videos, not just homemade porn, but wire transfer receipts from Burisma. It's things that congressional committees subpoena for. So I recognize that it had to be a huge undertaking to go through all the material. And so I've developed this, essentially a nonprofit PI firm. There's a private investigator, Brendan Shaddles. He sits on our board, along with an attorney who sits on our board, along with me. And we wrote this book. And the book contains no false allegations. It's very conservative in its pronouncements. We only talk about things that there are evidence for. For example, when we say that Hunter solicited a prostitute, we don't just say that like normal news outlets do. We put the phone number, the name, arrest history, and all the information that a non-corrupt law enforcement officer would need to subpoena the underlying cell records for the indictment. So we wrote this essentially for law enforcement, not expecting that they would do their job and be courageous, but just to be able to say that they have no excuse not to act on this. So that's really the backstory. And through that, we were following everything with Hunter Biden. I think I've had a Hunter Biden Google News alert. It's another one of our secrets. We get, every time his name is indexed on Google, which is about 20 to 25 times a day, I get a notification and an email. And so that means I'm up to date on every single thing he and Kevin Morris are doing on the internet by hour. And so in May of 2022, when all this news is breaking about Morris, we made sure that we were one of the first people to dig into it, because once that went public, we knew, given his wealth and connections, that he would try to have things scrubbed from the internet. And of course he has. Even little things like real estate listings for his Malibu mansion across the street from James Cameron, that sort of stuff, all that's been scrubbed. So in the first 72 hours, it was like a horse race where we were trying to scrub everything from the internet about this guy, his Cornell alumni profile and everything else. And through that whole fiasco of him lying to you and not disclosing that he was Hunter Biden's attorney, we got on his radar too. So Morris sued us in California State Court. That is in the appellate courts right now, because we partially won the district court ruling. And if we win that appeal, he owes us about $250,000 in legal fees.
Can I just want to bring you back though? But you knew about Kevin Morris before he became public. In fact, you out-Morrised Kevin Morris. You infiltrated his inner circle.
Well, a friend of mine, a friend of mine posed as a left-wing hacker and offered Kevin ridiculous information about the laptop, saying that people that weren't involved with the laptop were, just to toy with him and see what he would offer up. Well, within 4 days, Kevin, having the discretion of, a high school girl at the lunch table, offered a schematic to my friend. Again, I had no idea my friend was doing this. Part of the reason why he was my friend is he was so good at this sort of thing. Kevin sent him a schematic of what they believed the laptop story was, and it was completely ridiculous. It looked like a chalkboard on John Nash's classroom.
I think I remember. Professor. Yeah, I remember that visual. Actually, we'll put that visual up there on the screen so people can see it.
And so
it's the scribblings of a madman.
Yeah.
Yes. All I did was take the photo that my friend had sent me and passed it along the New York Post. And he lost his mind because he had been conned. And to this day, he's still lying to the court. To this day, he should be, along with what he did to you guys, disbarred because he submitted an affidavit and he knows I wasn't the one texting him. He knows that. And we have subsequent text messages between Kevin and my friend admitting that he knows it's not me, and yet he put in a declaration that it's me because he's suing me for impersonation.
So when you infiltrated Morris's world, what was Morris up to?
Morris is somebody who has too much money for his own good. We didn't hear about the IRS whistleblower allegations that the DOJ prohibited them from interviewing Morris as a witness. But knowing what we knew up to that point, it makes perfect sense. So from May of 2022 to late 2023, what we have is somebody who is an attorney, but never spends a day in court. I don't think he has spent a day in court on behalf of a client in the 21st century. This guy's really not an attorney. He's a make-believe attorney. What he is essentially a deal-maker attorney.
Mm-hmm.
And that golden goose that he made from representing the South Park creators really needs to be investigated. If he really is some sort of witting or unwitting CIA asset, it would not surprise me at all that he was magically inserted into that deal to make a ton of money, because he renegotiated, as you know, the streaming deal, the streaming terms, to get 50% of the ad revenue from Comedy Central. So he's a very wealthy entertainment lawyer, really a deal maker. And secondly, he has probably a 2017 diagnosis of Trump derangement syndrome, one of the most virulent strains we've encountered in the wild. This is somebody who is 2017 Midas Touch and Lincoln Project material, totally out of their mind. So you add in money bags, wife is estranged from him. Gabby left him in 2018. They've been estranged. They keep the trust in, they're married on paper because they have a joint trust that owns their 7 properties. But he's been alone since 2018. So you add in loneliness, boredom, too much cash, drugs, and Trump derangement syndrome. That is a toxic stew of Hollywood paranoia.
Throw in grifting Biden's and power, the shadow, the touch of power. I mean, that's another part of the toxic brew, yeah?
Yes, a love of wanting to be relevant, right? He's 61. He was born a month after my dad, and he acts like he's 31.
Yeah.
I think he was bored with his life. His kids won't talk to him. Apparently, according to the New York Post, his own daughter, Dulcie. Again, all these kids are adults. I shouldn't even say kids. One of the things that he's suing me for is that I posted pictures of his kids. You know where I got those pictures of adult kids? On their public Instagram page. It's not like I'm going to some relative and getting secret pictures. It's ridiculous. The boy is 25 and the girl is 23. These are adults. Dulcie apparently yelled at Hunter saying, stop taking advantage of my dad. So even his own family left him on an island, figuratively, and he's dealt with Hunter, and he's left with Hunter, one of the worst people in the world to be left on an island with.
Yes. How much money do you think he's given Hunter?
I always pick the floor amount because I don't want a defamation lawsuit. And part of the reason why he won't ever even bring that up with me is I've been so conservative. It's a conservative floor, $7 million. Mm-hmm. And that's not just the back taxes. These are forgivable loans for the child support, for the rent, and for the legal fees against yours truly. This is all possible with Morris. And I know we'll get into the lawsuit, but the money running out from Hunter, that storyline is true, but it's been true for months. The real reason why Hunter's wanting to drop this lawsuit against us is because we noticed a deposition of Morris. This is news. Morris blew off a deposition when I was in LA for February 26th. We noticed him properly, and he accepted service on February 11th. Morris didn't even show up to his deposition, so we went to the magistrate judge asking Morris to show cause why he should not be in contempt. Mm-hmm. And that is why I think he's telling Hunter, hey, you can keep your little lawsuits against Patrick Byrne and the IRS because those two entities have money. He knows I don't have money. I'm just a normal guy, right? I'm not from a family of means. And so he is keeping the lawsuits against those two entities because they could see a potential payout. So Morris is like, yeah, I might be able to recoup some of my sunk costs through the IRS and Byrne, but take the Ziggler one away because he's the one that's going to depose me, and I don't want to be deposed.
Mm-hmm. And why do you think he doesn't want to be deposed?
Because he knows that I know more than the congressional investigators, number one. And that's not hubristic. That's just the way it is. By the way, the congressional investigators did a good job. I'm a curmudgeon, and I give them like a B. That's very good, right? A B is like, I hate grade inflation, right? So the average grade should be a C. They did a good job. And they got a lot of information out of that congressional deposition. And I'm not complaining about it. I'm just saying that take one topic that we would go into ad nauseum in the deposition, and it's a topic you know very well about, this documentary that's coming out.
Yeah.
This thing makes me so mad I can hardly put it into English words. The fact that Bindler, Cohn, Salzman, all of these losers are making a documentary. Apparently it's already aired. The first version's already aired. It aired in December.
Wow.
It didn't air. They had a private screening of it.
The private screening, I'm sorry. They did a private screening of the first draft. The amount of defamatory statements that'll be in there about you and me and Miranda Devine, it'll make my blood boil. And we were going to ask him about that. Who funded that? Do you have a deal with Netflix?
That's right. I was going to ask you that very question. I mean, when you talk about how much money he has given Hunter and whatever. I mean, or how much, how much money was spent on the documentary? Flying a private jet to Serbia and having it parked there like for a few days, and having a whole bunch of these guys with him. I mean, and he did have a film crew with him. I mean, that's real money. That's
funny. I believe. I don't know if there'll be that much defamatory about us. This will be a Hunter Biden sob story, But I suppose he needs villains. He needs villains, and we're the villains.
Yes, and I just want to see it so badly. Because I would love to watch it with you.
Yeah. Let's watch it together. I'm all about that.
I'll fly out to California and maybe I'll get some other people who've tracked this story because we can in real time fact check it.
Perfect. I love it. We're doing it.
We could even air it or stream it. Yeah. I would be honored because, like you said, that's real money. And that 7 million figure, it's a great point because I have not factored that into any of my calculations. The 7 million figure I'm getting from two sources. Yeah. The Congress, what he told the Congress, and the child support litigation. That's what I'm getting. That's where I'm getting 7 million from. So you're right in that the cost of production of the documentary could be up into $1 to $5 million. And that's not even a loan to Hunter.
Totally. Yeah. And, the Soy Boy camera crew that he had, I mean, they still need to be paid. Yeah. Right? Cohn and Bindler. So they still need to be paid. Editors need to be paid. Color correction people need to be paid.
Bindler's another piece of work. I think he's integral to all this because Bindler was at the criminal trial where his wife called me a Nazi. Which is, of course, ridiculous. Like, their insults aren't even correct. Like, she should have came up to me and said, you're a real horse's ass. And I would have disagreed with her, but I would have understood it.
Are you Jewish? Are you Jewish?
No, I'm not Jewish, but it's so ridiculous. Because I'm like a libertarian constitutionalist, right? And the Nazi regime was about total authoritarianism. It's not even remotely what I'm like. But Bindler, the reason why I bring up Bindler is because he was there too. Bindler was actually shoulder to shoulder with Melissa when she screamed at me. That's why he's coming to mind.
Wow.
And Bindler was there for the entirety of the criminal trial. And I'm interested in Bindler because he's best friends with Matthew McConaughey, as you know. Matthew McConaughey just came out with a new book, and the first person he thanks in the acknowledgement section is Bindler. Wow. So we put Matthew McConaughey in our book because right at this time that the documentary starts, Matthew McConaughey takes the podium at the White House talking about how people should give up their assault weapons because of Uvalde. I bet my life on that Kevin Morris helped facilitate that press briefing with Matthew McConaughey at the White House.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So you published this report.
Yes.
Hunter and Kevin, obviously.
Yeah, how did they
obviously
respond?
It's a truthful report, so they just said, well, we can't argue against
hands
the truth.
up, you got us.
Is that what they did, or did they?
Of course not. Their first goal was the lawsuit from Kevin, and they said in the lawsuit that me and my group, the two other board members, are dangerous, anti-women, anti-Semitic serial stalkers. Not a single adjective is correct. And of course, we're going to do bar complaints on those lawyers because if they did any reasonable investigation, they would have known that none of that is true. But he got Brian Sullivan, an LA lawyer, to sign off on it. And we won. So partially. And he's appealing the portion that we won. So they didn't ever over a 2-year period address a single page of the report. The goal was to sue me personally and paint me as a racist so that therefore they would not even have to address it. It was, I'm sure you've seen that triangle of logical fallacies, right? The ad hominem is at the bottom of the triangle. That's where they're at. They're not even midway up yet.
Yeah.
So the triangle of argumentation is at the very top of the pyramid. It's refuting the central point. And then it goes, straw man and down, down, down. They're still at the bottom. They're scraping the scum off the bottom of the pyramid still.
So they didn't actually address. They didn't address any of the facts.
Not a single one. Hunter has never specified a single lie that I've said about him. Not a single one.
But then what was the basis? What was the basis of their legal action? What were they?
Well, there's the Kevin legal action, then there's the Hunter legal action. But so what's the damage? What's the law? What are they saying?
Yeah, what are they saying? What is their case?
Apart from you being a terrible person.
Yeah.
I'll put them in two buckets. Kevin's came first in April of 23. That was in the California State Court, Los Angeles County Superior Court, Santa Monica Division. And he sued me and the nonprofit for intentional infliction of emotional distress. This is a 61-year-old male. Doxing,
emotional distress,
harassment, false light, and impersonation. And none of those are remotely
impersonation.
True.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
And he didn't follow the standard. And again, he's suing someone for harassment that has never been around him in person. The only time I've ever been in the same room with Kevin Morris is in Delaware in a federal courtroom for his client's criminal trial. Mm-hmm. So how can you I've never been around this person. I've never contacted his family. Like, it's the dumbest thing ever. He wanted the permanent. He applied for a preliminary injunction, and even the liberal judge Richard Epstein denied it because he said that he's suing somebody over a meme. My friend made a meme of Kevin as the Geico caveman, which he looks like. And Kevin put that in the lawsuit.
There is a similarity, it has to be said.
It's unbelievable.
Let's put a picture of Kevin Morris up with the Geico caveman there beside him. So,
he sued, and even Richard Epstein was like, you sued somebody over a Geico meme.
Yes, which did Richard Epstein say, which, has a certain validity now in a certain light. Maybe not, he's a judge.
No, but the decision he gave, the Epstein decision, will be overturned on appeal because he didn't use the right standard. We filed under anti-SLAPP, and he used his own metric to evaluate 4 of the 5 claims. So we'll probably be looking at enormous fees for Kevin, and he might appeal it to the California Supreme Court.
Yeah, just to let people know, and we'll be talking about this later on in the podcast, actually, with the Mark Steyn case. Mm-hmm. If you take a case if you try a SLAPP is strategic lawsuit against public participation, it's one of those lawsuits that's meant to silence debate or criticism.
You've been on the other end of them. It's awful.
Yes, and so you take a SLAPP injunction against the person suing you, and if you win, they have to pay the law fees because it's seen as a vexatious lawsuit. It's seen as a SLAPP lawsuit where they're trying to stop. They're not concerned about the truth of it or not. They just want to shut down the debate and the argument. So if you win, Morris will have to pay not only his legal fees but your legal fees. So, and now, what does Hunter want to do with his lawsuit?
Yeah, thanks for going into that because that's key. And we already have a partial order for fees. So Kevin Morris today owes us about $50,000, but that has stayed until the appeals court rules. Mm-hmm. In the federal case, Hunter is suing us on 3 causes of action. 2 are ridiculous. 1 is hilarious. The first ridiculous and the only federal cause of action is the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. What Hunter is doing is trying to make a computer, which is still in the custody of the FBI, through legal alchemy, transform into data. So he's saying because I have his data, which of course is not his data, he relinquished the rights to it. Mm-hmm. He's saying because Ziggler has my data, he violated the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. Of course, that's preposterous because it doesn't cover data. It just covers a computer. So that'll be overturned. And again, he's wanting to dismiss this lawsuit without prejudice. The second claim is that we violated a California state statute dealing with data. And the third one, which is hilarious, is he's saying that we violated a California business regulation for deceptive practices because we modified his data by covering up his genitalia in our book. So according to Hunter's own lawyers, they would have preferred their client be butt naked in our report.
Yeah.
So because we put black boxes and because we're Christians and not in the business of distributing pornography, right, and because we put black boxes over their client's penis, he's saying that we modified his data and thus we engage in a deceptive business practice. That was signed by Winston and Strawn.
That you can get lawyers to obviously do anything. That's one thing. Once you start getting into the legal world on either end, you realize lawyers will put their names to virtually anything, even just complete lies, complete hash.
I've been digging into that case with Ziggler.
Yeah.
That's a case of that. I remember he tried to like assault you on the street.
Yes.
That's right.
And I was reading his bar. He got dismissed from the bar in New York, and I was reading those proceedings a couple weeks ago. I thought about you because he's the poster child for that. Just put anything on a filing.
Yeah.
Just a technical point. What jurisdictions are all these actions happening in? Where are the courts?
The court that we're in is the Central District of California Federal Court, the First Street Courthouse. Same one that he pleaded guilty to 3 tax felonies.
Same place where Anne McElhinney broke her clavicle.
I broke my clavicle in a mad effort to go and watch the trial.
That really hurts. My dad broke that.
I really wouldn't recommend it.
A killer. So
are you concerned? Are you concerned about the juries in these situations that they're
totally, and not just the jury, but we filed a 50-page recusal motion because our judge, who was randomly assigned, was appointed by Hunter's daddy and gave Hunter's daddy $2,000 in his 2020 presidential campaign.
Yeah, come on.
So we put the FEC document in our motion for recusal, and he refuses to recuse. So we've been calling him.
I have to say, however, good luck trying to find a judge in California who didn't give Biden $2,000.
Yeah, but at least some of them would not be appointed by Joe Biden. Some of them, may have given him money, but they don't owe their lifetime job to him. But so Hunter now wants to withdraw the lawsuit. Is that right?
He does. And again, the situation financially that Hunter has been in, he's been in ever since Joe announced he wasn't running again. He hasn't sold a painting, in my calculations, since June of 2024. So Hunter's been broke this entire time. So he could have dismissed, by his own logic, he should have dismissed this against me last June. But what is occurring here is he's using the pretext of running out of money as a way for Kevin to get out of his deposition. So they took the extraordinary step of filing an ex parte motion, which, as you know, means emergency, which means we only had 24 hours to respond. Under normal rules of federal civil procedure, we would have a week to respond to his motion. He's going to the judge on an emergency basis saying, we want a dismissal without prejudice, which means Hunter could bring this lawsuit again at any time in the future when he finds a new sugar daddy who doesn't care about being deposed. Any sane defendant in our position, guys, would oppose this. At the very least, we asked the judge in our response papers, which we filed 23 hours afterwards, if you're going to dismiss this, at least dismiss it with prejudice. So this man-child, and this is my paraphrasing, we didn't put this in the document, this man-child can let me move on with my life. Maybe I can go back in the government and help the country out. But
it's a very good point you're making. Sorry to interrupt you. It's a very good point you're making. I mean, Ryan Reynolds and Blake Lively have discovered this themselves. I mean, in the normal run of events, to get back to some really important court cases.
Very important court cases.
Yeah. So
I've been following the exhibits. They're juicy.
Yes, they're great. They're wonderful. But I think Ryan Reynolds and Blake Lively took the lawsuit because who was Justin Baldoni? Okay, he's made tens of millions in the movie, but tens of millions doesn't last long when you're up against big bucks, California lawyers and a protracted legal dispute. However, what they didn't take into account that Baldoni's producing partner is a billionaire
who is outraged by what's happened and he's not going to give up.
And he's not going to give up. So Baldoni, so you're very correct to be concerned about the future where some billionaire sugar daddy can go to Hunter and say, and it could be about something else you've done, in the Trump administration, and some billionaire comes and says, "Okay, Hunter, revive your lawsuit. We're going to fund it to get at this guy." So you definitely need it to be squashed completely. I mean,
yes, and the press made me out to be the unreasonable party that ex-Trump aide is going to fight this. No. We want it to be dismissed. We just don't want it to be on a ridiculous Biden set of terms that no sane defendant would accept.
Yeah. So What does this say? I mean, I think I know the answer to this. What does this say about about the Bidens and people like Kevin Morris? Do you think they would have withdrawn if they had won the 24? If Biden was now President Joe Biden in a second term, do you think that these cases will be withdrawn, or is this just the example of the money all drying up because they're not in power anymore, and that's the only reason Hunter made any money and Morris gave him any money?
Well, I think that not only would they not withdraw any of the civil cases, Hunter and Kevin would do everything in their power to get me federally criminally indicted.
Yeah, yeah.
And so when I go to bed at night, I thank God in his infinite wisdom for allowing Trump to get back into office
Yeah.
on a personal basis, because
Yeah.
there is no limit. You know, when Kevin realized that my friend had catfished him,
Mhm.
he said that eye socket effing was the newest thing in prison. And he thought he was talking to me at the time. And he said that I'm going to go to prison and that he is going to take me and my family's money, and that he had 8 lawyers on our case, and that he
Mhm.
said we're going to chase you to the ends of the earth. So guess what we did, guys? In our response to their ex parte motion, we included our appeal, which has the words from Kevin Morris saying, "We are chasing you to the end of the earth." So
Yeah.
why would a
Nice.
defendant accept dismissal without prejudice when the lawyer for the plaintiff says, "We are following you till the ends of the earth"?
Yeah. No,
It's
I think.
it's a type of lawfare that only Rudy and my former boss and a couple of other people have had to deal with. We're up to cumulatively, I put those 2 buckets, the 2 cases. We had to do our 990, right? So our accountant just came back to us because we have to
Yeah, yeah.
file in May, and it's $497,000 in attorney's fees,
Yeah.
and we've
I-
only
no problem
raised
understanding that.
950 grand over that time period. So half of our expenses has been fighting these man-childs.
Yeah.
Man-children, I should say, plural. And that's what I called on Newsmax. I called Hunter a man-child. I've been exploring this idea of Peter Pan. Most people forget the plot of Peter Pan, but this is a boy who never grows up, who lives in Neverland. And I'm just going to start calling Hunter Peter Pan. This is a Peter Pan-like figure. This is somebody who's never been held accountable for anything
Correct.
he's ever done
Yeah.
in his entire
You're
existence.
so right. I mean, I remember his book. I mean, his book, it's it's absolutely, it's a really good way of describing it. And actually, to his detriment, he's never been, really to his detriment, he has never been pulled up on anything.
Yeah.
I remember he was going out to you probably remember this, according to himself, and this is his own confessional book, that he was going out to rehab somewhere out in the desert, I think, out in Arizona or something, leaving
Sonoma,
from LA.
yeah.
And has this spectacular car crash, out of which he walks away, of course, completely unscathed. The cops come along and they made it go away. They made the whole thing go away.
And there
was drug paraphernalia in the car. He was super, super high. He decided, and then he walked away. And he also said, I'm not actually going to go to rehab. But like all of that, like any other normal person in some situation like that would have been, prison, rehab. The story would have been everywhere. But that got buried, like all the other stories, like the Burisma thing, which is an extraordinary story in itself.
Yes, and he's had people in the press cover for him his entire existence. So there's one woman in particular, Miranda and I talk about her a lot because she's particularly loathsome. Her name is Margaret Wheeler, and she goes by the name, she's a Blue Anon. She goes by the name online Empty Wheel, and essentially we think she has been receiving funds from Morris to just put out disgusting propaganda in the form of donations to her outlet. But the reason why I bring her up is not to just say her name out of the blue. It's to say it's these type of people who cannot see reality clearly, or who suppress reality to such a degree that they're defending this guy. He is beyond defense to a normal human being. And he is the epitome of the very thing that they talk about, which is white privilege.
Yeah.
He has every trapping of white privilege, considering his dad, as you know very well, put all those black men in prison via mandatory minimums.
That's right. Yeah. He's had more felony possessions of drugs than most of us have hot dinners. So
When does this all end then? I mean, how do you see?
When's your next court case?
Yeah,
Well,
when's the
it's
next
a,
court
it's a
case?
good
What's the
question,
timeline?
My mom asked me that last night because she hates. We as a family generally hate attorneys.
Yeah.
And I say that sort of tongue in cheek because I like my attorney. Jennifer's great, and I'd love for her to meet you guys. Seriously, I'd love. I know we're saying this on air, but I'd love for Jennifer to come and meet you guys. She lives in Hollywood. This ends when Vera rules. So the federal case could end as soon as an hour from now if Vera dismisses it without prejudice or with prejudice. There is no federal rule on when he has to respond to an ex parte motion. If he denies it and makes discovery go forward, which we want because we get to depose Morris and we'll win on summary judgment, then it could end within the couple months.
Please video and record it.
Yes, and nothing's under protective order, so we will put the video depositions of Morris and Hunter right on our YouTube page, just like we found an arrest record of a DUI for one of Hunter's former business partners. We just put that on our YouTube page.
Nice.
I can send you the link to our YouTube page if you could put it in the description. We'd really appreciate 100%. It because we put some stuff on Hunter up there. But the federal case could end as soon as tomorrow. It could also end as late as this fall. The state case could end up not going forward until 2026 because even if we win the appellate court level, he might appeal it to the SCOTUS because he doesn't want to have to write our nonprofit a $250,000 check. Morris, that is. And I hope to be able to come back on because I enjoy talking to you guys and I really want to do that documentary screening. That's a great idea.
We're all about it. I think that'd be such fun. Absolutely.
How many lies do you think will be in the documentary?
Oh God, I don't know.
There's a 100% chance you guys will be in the documentary. And it'll be DNC level propaganda. It'll be stuff that'll make G blush. It'll be Ministry of State Security.
I'm sitting here thinking, no, they're not that bad. They're not that stupid, are they? And of course they are. See, the problem is if you've never had to suffer the consequences.
That's right. You've never had any
You've got
opposition.
no humility. You've got no... and you think, well, I can just write what I want because nothing's ever going to happen. No one important is going to challenge me on this. But let's see. I think people are tired of the Biden train, and I know some reporters who are very interested in the Bidens. And
yes, even mainstream people who didn't have the political guts to come out when Joe was president.
No, that's who I'm talking about. Actually, I know them, and they phoned me for chats, and I think they'll be very interested in this documentary. It's actually they should, if they really wanted. I mean, by the way, if Kevin Morris cared about Hunter Biden's sobriety, he wouldn't release the documentary. The last thing Hunter needs now is to be... I was talking to someone recently about sobriety, and they said, well, they say this guy has been clean for 12 years. They say the three things that stop you from really getting clean is that if you're too good-looking, too wealthy,
bored,
and something else, and too powerful or something, because you never, when you're in that bubble, you never face the consequences of your addiction, and you got to face those consequences. And this is another way of playing Hunter as the victim, saying, Hunter, you've done nothing wrong, and it's just setting Hunter up for a fall.
I have a quick question: where is Hunter now? And did his house burn down in the fires? The house he was renting in Malibu.
According to our source, no. The house he formerly lived in did burn down, but he had moved across the street into a house that the Secret Service previously rented. But, and this is one of the few good arguments they've made, that the carcinogens and other things are probably bad enough to where you don't want to go back in there. But his house actually didn't burn down.
Okay,
he's apparently going to move east. He's going to move back.
I'm very relieved. Well, I'm very relieved because I was very concerned about the artwork that could have been lost in the fire. And this is for posterity.
For future generations.
That's right.
The artwork. I saw he's going to move
apparently
east.
The artwork did burn. So he had the artwork, some of it, a lot of it, in this storage unit. And the only reason why we know this is because our attorney talking with theirs is apparently the artwork did burn in a storage unit, but his house didn't. And Morris's miraculously didn't burn, but all the carcinogens in the air and everything else, like paint burning and all that stuff, makes it uninhabitable right now.
Well, I think it's kind of interesting because if the artwork burnt and it was insured and previously it had sold for very large sums of money, there could be an insurance company that is
on the hook,
examining all of this very, very,
I was just going to say,
very carefully.
You might get calls from insurance companies because they don't want to pay that claim. But guess what? The way I look at it, if they're dumb enough to insure his art, I want them to pay the claim.
Yeah. Fair enough. No.
That's another industry we're not too fond of. Big insurance, like the attorney, like the legal industry. I really like the. And maybe you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but I like the loser pays system, preferable to what we have here.
Well, certainly the system we were brought up with, that the loser pays, and it definitely. Now the problem with it is, no, I mean in the UK, what it means is only rich people can afford to take court cases, right? But it's the same here. Poor people can't afford to take court cases, so it certainly stops middle income people taking ridiculous cases, because they're left with double the bill.
Hopefully we can talk again when the documentary comes out, because I think they're so hubristic, guys. They're not going to be able to sit on that B-roll.
I agree with you. I reluctantly, but I mean, you see, they're really unlucky because you saw, Jeff Bezos give Melania Trump $40 million for her documentary.
He did.
Now it'll be a piece of. I know you can't produce your own documentary.
You can't. By the way, sorry. I mean, we've made a number of documentaries. I don't know how you spend $40 million on a documentary. You really can't.
So he's given her $40 million. She's got final say on it. There's going to be nothing. There's going to be no revelation in it. There's going to be nothing of no tension in it, no journey, whatever. I mean, listen, she's a fascinating person, but her documentary is not worth $40 million.
I agree. The economics don't work out. Can I make a small prediction in Hunter's personal life? So you asked me where Hunter is right now. I think he's going to be moving back east. He might even have to move into Joe's mom's cottage on Joe's property, because I don't think Jill will want them in the Rehoboth Beach house because they ruin every property they touch. You guys know that in Venice. They ruined it. And he tried to sell poop art. So they're destructive, and I think they'll move into the cottage on Joe's property. But I'm predicting, and I don't want this to occur, I hope I'm wrong, that Melissa will leave him in 18 months.
I mean, funny, the minute you started saying that, I thought that's exactly what, because, suddenly because the world is not going to be as pretty as it used to be. I mean, this was a very nice lifestyle, living out in Malibu, living on the Venice
The
canals.
Lincoln bedroom.
Yeah,
no more Lincoln bedroom for Melissa Cohen. She ain't staying there anymore.
And basically, the Air Force One and all of that. But I mean, we definitely need to meet up, because there's so many stories. I mean, I love the story of how they met.
Yeah.
I love it. Where the first time they met, and she said to him, I
think it was the second time.
No, the very first.
Wow.
And I'm right about this. The very first time that they met, and it was set up by the friends, whatever. And he said, I'm an alcoholic.
No, drug addict.
I'm a drug addict and an alcoholic. And she said, well, that stops now. That's over now. And it was. According to him, that was it. It was over
magic.
Now.
Melissa's just full of magic.
I don't know if he asked her to marry her that night, but it might have been. And by the way, I don't have an issue with that, because my own parents were engaged the first time they met. So
yeah, but your father wasn't on crack cocaine.
He wasn't. This is true.
He did like sugar a lot, though.
He had a sugar problem.
One of my favorite pictures in the book is the marriage officiant. So this is Instant Marriage LA, Maria Karlosh. InstantMarriageLA.com, and one of my favorite, they have on their Facebook page, they posted the TMZ article. Joe Biden's son Hunter gets married in secret wedding, and instant marriage in Los Angeles. Guess who got them married? Since the cat is out of the bag and the news is all over the internet, we feel we have bragging rights to reveal that our company, Instant Marriage in Los Angeles, officiated Hunter Biden and Melissa Cohen's wedding. Hunter and Melissa are joining a list of celebrities whose marriages we officiated after Johnny Depp and Amber Heard.
Oh,
we know how that ended up.
Yeah.
Page 588 in our book for those at home. Absolutely hilarious.
I love it. And where can people get the book?
So the book is online in a PDF, and you can get a physical copy at BidenReport.com.
BidenReport.com.
And what's your YouTube channel?
Marco Polo 501c3. That's on all platforms. Marco Polo 501c3.
And
we'll put all the links up in our show notes.
What about your Twitter?
Same thing.
Marco Polo 501c3.
That's
Perfect.
Right.
Okay.
And I hope to come back again. I like talking with you guys, and thanks for all you've done with my son Hunter. And this is an insane story.
Insane. Oh, there's so many. The details are just
amazing,
extraordinary. Yeah.
It's as if Caligula's son left a laptop at a Roman repair shop.
Yes.
Yeah. Exactly.
On that note,
thank you so much, Gareth.
Thanks.
Thank you for your time.
It. Thank you.
Bye. We have to go to those court cases.
Really like to do that. No, that'll be fun.
I have some interesting questions to ask these
Maybe
people.
you do.
Yes. So talking of court cases, it's now a fact, and I think it's quite clear, that conservatives can't get justice in most coastal courtrooms in the US. The courts are politicized, and leftist juries in these Democrat cities are happy to go along and convict regardless of the evidence. That's true if the defendant is Donald Trump or Mark Steyn or the Jan Sixers. So we covered the Mark Steyn story. Michael Mann.
We were the only journalists who went every day to the court case, and it was fascinating. But
let's talk about the court case. Michael Mann produced this hockey stick. He's a climate alarmist scientist that said,
it's a hockey stick graph.
Mm-hmm. The temperature is completely flat, and then just as man started using fossil fuels, it rose like straight up almost. And nonsense, complete nonsense. But Mark Steyn said it was nonsense, and said, by the way, that Michael Mann was found doing some naughty things on the internet, basically slamming and slandering and in emails, fellow scientists, being unethical, all that. So Penn State, where he was a professor, launched an inquiry into it and found him to be completely innocent. But at the same time, they were also inquiring into whether there was any sexual abuse from Mr. Jerry Sandusky, and they found, wow, he's completely innocent as well. Turns out they covered up that, and we'll come on to this later. Graham Spanier, one of the president of Penn State, actually went to jail for the cover-up. So Mark Steyn said, look, if a university will cover up its star football coach, they will cover up the star climatologist who's bringing in a lot of money. He sued, Michael Mann sued because he was compared to a child abuser. He wasn't. The cover-up was compared. So we covered the case every day with reenactments of the evidence. We would sit in the courtroom in DC and
listen for the highlights of the day and find those pieces in the transcripts and send that text over to Los Angeles where actors were waiting, and they would reenact those particular sections, and then we produced that overnight, did all the sound work on it, and it was published every morning. After every morning of the trial, there would be the day before's evidence in a podcast, would be hot in your inbox.
It got enormous praise. It's a really groundbreaking podcast. It's called Climate Change on Trial.
Well, let's play a clip.
It's called Climate Change on Trial. You can get it wherever you get your podcasts. Really would recommend it. It's a great summary. But I want to play you a clip of it. It's a clip of Mark Steyn opening argument. It's the end of his opening argument where he's talking about Graham Spanier and how Michael Mann, even though Graham Spanier has served a prison sentence for child endangerment, Michael Mann is still praising him in his books. And what does that say about Michael Mann's integrity? So let's hear an actor play the closing remarks of Mark Steyn's opening speech.
It says that Mr. Mann is a beneficiary of the same corrupt regime of which Sandusky was a beneficiary. It does not say that Mr. Mann is a paedophile, but as we will show you, he is pals with the paedophile's enabler, even after Spanier was jailed for child endangerment. Here are some of Michael Mann's books. All of them thank Graham Spanier in the acknowledgements. 2012, The Hockey Stick and the Climate Wars, Dispatches from the Front Lines. This was published in 2012, a few months before Graham Spanier was indicted for perjury, obstruction of justice, failure to report child abuse, and a few months before the report by former FBI Director Louis Freeh found that Spanier exhibited a striking lack of empathy for Sandusky's victims. 2016, The Madhouse Effect, How Climate Change Denial is Threatening Our Planet, Destroying Our Politics, and Driving Us Crazy. Again, Mr. Mann thanks Graham Spanier in the acknowledgements. even though Spanier is now headed to trial. Oh well, innocent until proven guilty and all that. 2021. The new climate war, the fight to take back our planet. So it's 2021. Graham Spanier is now a convicted criminal, but that's not enough for Mann to cease thanking him in the books. 2023. Our fragile moment. Just last year, Graham Spanier has been jailed for child endangerment. He's in his yellow jumpsuit, and this man is still putting him in his books. So Michael Mann is embarrassed to be associated with Jerry Sandusky, but not embarrassed to be associated with Jerry Sandusky's criminal enabler, a man sent to prison for endangering children. Does anybody in this room other than the plaintiff have friends who were jailed for endangering children? Would any of them thank the child endangerer, the pedo enabler in their books, even after he has been convicted, even after he has been imprisoned? That's the way our horribly corrupt society works. Graham Spanier covers Michael Mann's ass, and Michael Mann covers Graham Spanier's ass. We make our choices in life, and we live with the consequences. And Michael Mann made his choice, as we shall prove in the days ahead.
And actually, Mark Steyn really liked the actor who was playing him. So yeah,
you're mixed on.
I'm a little bit mixed on it. I think it's an exaggerated version of Mark. I don't think Mark sounds quite so pompous when he speaks. But anyway,
well, as Mark said, that's the way society works. We make our choices in life. We have to live with the consequences. And Michael Mann has made his choice. So let's hear what the choice was. So Mann won his case. He got awarded $1 compensatory damages for the damage. In other words,
they couldn't establish that he'd been damaged, basically, yes. And because of that, they said that the value of the damage to his life was $1.
Yes,
but then they decided to punish Mark Steyn
punitive
anyway,
damages
of $1 million,
right?
Which the High Court has already voiced an opinion on this.
The Supreme Court.
The Supreme Court has basically said if in such a situation, whatever the compensation is, it can't be more than 10 times what the damage was, which makes kind of sense, right?
They said whatever the original damages, the punitive damages can't be more than 10 times the. So, for example, Michael Mann was awarded $1 compensatory damage. The punitive can only be 10 times that, i.e., $10. That's what the Supreme Court said in one of their big rulings, and it makes sense. So the judge, even the judge was awful in Mark Steyn's case, but even he couldn't stomach the $1 million. So he said, actually, I'm going to reduce it down to $5,000.
It shouldn't even be $5,000.
Yes, it shouldn't be $5,000.
And the reason for that is because, when we were sitting there during the court case and, they went through lots and lots of evidence, because obviously, the plaintiff, Michael Mann, and his team tried to, were trying to make the point that his life had been really destroyed by this one article that Mark Steyn had produced, and that, his whole life had gone downhill from then. And actually what Mark Steyn's team did was look at the timeline of what had happened since that article had been published. And actually what we discovered, and what was very clear very, very clearly pointed out to the jury, was that everything had gone absolutely swimmingly for Michael Mann since this particular article had appeared. Yeah. He had more money, more prizes, more travel, more bromances, by the way, with Leonardo DiCaprio.
He actually used that word in court.
He had a bromance with Leonardo DiCaprio, which was very, very happy about. And
all I'm not sure Leo knows much about it.
And the only thing that they could point to that was they literally were so thin on any evidence of anything bad happening to Michael Mann that they had this one anecdote that they told, which was so funny. So basically, they made the point that Michael Mann was teaching at Penn State at the time, and which is in College Station, which is a small town in Pennsylvania. And in College Station, there is a Wegmans supermarket. And apparently one day, Michael Mann was going with his wife and daughter to Wegmans to the shopping, which he said was almost the most fabulous part of his whole week, and kind of talked about what a beautiful joy it was to be with his wife and daughter shopping. His daughter, by the way, was a teenager, which you can't imagine any teenager ever enjoying going shopping to a supermarket with their parents. However,
I want to say most men don't enjoy going
to supermarkets anyway.
Yes.
So there they are in the Wegmans, and
Aisle
basically someone in aisle 9 looks at him strangely. That's it, by the way. That's all of it. That's the whole thing. That's the whole story. Someone looked at him strangely, and that's what he pointed to as this like massive damage to his life.
So what
and
you're
of course,
saying,
what I'm saying, what I'm actually saying, and what Mark Steyn actually said was, maybe that guy, maybe in fact Michael Mann was standing in eye line of the, of something like, some delicacy, some cat delicacy, for example, or some kind of Haagen-Dazs ice cream or something, although I don't like Haagen-Dazs. But, standing in the way of something that the man was trying to get on a shelf, or maybe the man was just having a bad day. We have no idea. The man never said anything, but this is what they cling to. This is what they cling to as the super, super damaging thing that happened.
On that basis, Michael Mann was trying to clean up aisle 9.
Bum.
Yes. Okay, so let's get back to basics. This was a trial that should never have happened, by the way, in the land of free speech.
Yeah.
I sat in the courtroom every day. We sat in the courtroom, and it was not defamatory. He made a very valid point that officials who had covered up a child abuser would you couldn't trust their judgment or their integrity to not cover up their
star climate
scientist. Now, however, one thing we should say is that it wasn't all. There was a further bit of bad news in the court case for Michael Mann. He originally sued National Review Online, and we'll hear about it as we spoke earlier with Garrett Ziggler. They took a slap motion, strategic lawsuit against public participation. Mann lost that, and he was found to have taken a lawsuit to stop public debate, so he had to pay National Review's costs. The judge agreed with that, and the judge said Michael Mann has to pay National Review $500,000. So now I don't think Michael Mann's ever going to pay that, but it's so Michael Mann lost his award from $1 million down to $5,000, and it's been affirmed that he has to pay $500,000. So let's keep watching this case.
But you can listen to the whole case, and we would highly recommend Climate Change on Trial, and the link to find the whole episode, all of the episodes and the whole series is in the show notes, and it's really very powerful. We highly recommend it. The actors who did the reenactments were just brilliant, and it brings the whole thing to life, and it's almost like you were in the courtroom yourself. So please listen and leave a comment if you listen.
So I don't want to spend too long on it because it's kind of confusing, but it's hard to know what the story is here. It's the usual college campus
madness
dance. Columbia have now said they've seen the light, and they want to work to wipe out anti-Semitism on their campus. Funny that
took them, Funny the timing of that. Yeah. We've had
because they've had years of just vile interrupting classes, interrupting libraries, Jewish people being attacked on campus. But Trump came out and said, we're going to withdraw $400 million in federal funds, and then we're going to look for the rest.
Yes.
If you don't tackle this. And they said, we have now decided we're going to tackle this. So the Department of Education released a statement saying they announced the immediate cancellation of approximately $400 million in federal grants and contracts to Columbia University due to the school's continued inaction in the face of persistent harassment of Jewish students. And they warned this is only the first round. So they're going to go back and look for more.
Good.
I mean, it's been really bad. They've invaded Israeli education classes, handed out anti-Semitic flyers. They took over the library. They took over buildings.
They excluded Jewish students from college, basically.
They excluded Jewish students from college. So let's see if Columbia has really learned its lesson, and let's see if that message is spreading.
And one of the things that comes up out of this, it fits in a weird way. It also fits into the whole Doge experiment, which we're hoping is wildly successful. So Columbia is sitting on an endowment of $14.8 billion. Billion with a B, by the way. So, you like doing this kind of thing, Phelim, at an average, like if they got a really bad return on that money, if that money was invested, if it got a really, really bad return on it.
Apparently you're supposed to, 8% is normal. Let's say they get 5%. Let's say they put it in the post office and get 5%. So that is the $700 million a year.
I think that's correct.
Yes. Around $700 million. So my bigger question is, what are these endowments for?
No, what exactly? No, exactly. That's kind of the same point. I mean, why aren't you using that? Why aren't you using that? And why are you taking money off taxpayers? And by the way, never got a chance to go to Colombia and disrupt the classes of Jewish people. Never got a chance to be anti-Semitic on campus, and that's been like so. You know, and
a missed opportunity.
A missed opportunity to be an anti-Semite on college campuses with your mummy and daddy's money and the taxpayers of the country's
it's
money.
kind of a rite of passage. You know?
I actually think more people need to know that ordinary taxpayers are funding these kids.
I mean, my question is could we not spend some of that 14.8 billion curing cancer? Is cancer not a big problem? Like you've got 14.8 billion. I mean, Harvard I think has 40 billion or 50 billion. Like,
why are they not deploying this money? Well, also, but why are they not deploying the money to run the college? And why are they asking ordinary taxpayers to fess up? You know, by the way, for some of these courses, by the way, that are being offered in these colleges, you know, like, you know, women's studies.
Well, I mean, you know, we used to sneer at those
ethnomusicology.
People used to sneer, and then I remember people saying, you know, oh, when they leave college and have to get a real job, they'll not be so liberal. As we know now, and as I said at the time, there's a whole ecosystem of non-jobs out there. USAID.
Well, we've really discovered about that.
You know, and these climate jobs where you can get a job with these bad degrees. And so they won't have to grow up. They'll live off the government forever. And it's not it's not a government job. It's an agency attached to a government or an agency getting direct funding from an NGO, which is a GO.
Yeah, it's not an NGO. It's not a non-governmental organisation. They're governmental organisations by any other name.
Romania, Anne.
Oh, yes.
Many people may not know we lived in Romania for
7 years.
Where we were journalists.
The year 2000 to 2007.
And do you remember Vadim
Tudor
of the Romania Mare party, the Greater Romania Party? We spent some quality time with him eating a lot of meat, I remember once. He was a candidate for the Romanian presidential election. Now there's a new presidential election coming up in Romania, which is an EU state. Now, bear in mind, Donald Trump is a threat to democracy. You have to remember this.
Nazi.
Absolutely, 100%.
Racist, homophobe, Islamophobe.
And the EU is really a bulwark against that.
Yes. And a great example of just how civilized nations operate when they're doing civilization properly.
So there was a guy called Călin Georgescu, and he ran in the runoff. Romania has a runoff system where the top two candidates go into the final thing. He won the runoff of the last...
And spectacularly won.
Yes.
And he kind of came out of nowhere.
Was all online. So the establishment parties got together, petitioned the courts, and decided that because the intelligence community said, 800 of the TikTok accounts supporting him are actually controlled by Russia. So basically, they're saying 800 TikTok accounts was enough to swing an election of 23 million people. Mm-hmm. You know, these are the same intelligence experts who launched the bogus investigation to the Trump candidacy and presidency? Are they the same people who said that the Biden laptop was Russian disinformation? But anyway, the Central Election Bureau rejected Georgescu's candidacy on Sunday, saying it did not meet the conditions of legality and that he violated the very obligation to defend democracy.
He violated the very obligation to defend democracy, is what they said.
Yes.
And in a social media post, Georgescu called the ban a direct blow to the heart of democracy worldwide. He's not wrong
there.
He's not wrong. This guy is not a criminal, right?
They're after he won the last election, they arrested him, right?
For what?
Charging him with attempting to overthrow the constitutional order and member of a neo-fascist organization. This is the man standing for election who has been stopped from standing for election by the establishment political parties, and they charged him with trying to overthrow the constitution. So
obviously, Phelim, the European Union are up in arms. Are the European Union up in arms, Phelim?
Can you not hear the man? That is the sound of the European Union and the American left being up in arms. Let's hear it again. Let's play that tape again.
Yes, an incredible amount of silence out of the European Union.
To give you a better clue of what's going on here, his popularity was based on the promise that he was going to restore Romania's dignity. That sounds a bit like a Make America Great Again.
Make Romania great again.
And he was going to end subservience to international organizations, including NATO and the EU.
Oh, they wouldn't like that.
Wouldn't like that. Now, we've spent 7 years in Romania covering elections, and we can tell you, Romania may be a faraway country about which you know little. It is very messy country, but it is very democratic. almost too democratic. I remember talking to somebody about the Constitution was written in 1991 after the overthrow of the real dictator then, communist, leftist dictator, Ceausescu. And I remember talking to someone and they said, yes, it's taken the best of the French Constitution, the best of the American Constitution, and the best of the British Constitution. And I was saying, so it's a complete mess. And they're going, yeah, there's so many checks and balances in it, and nothing can get done, and it's all coalition.
And look what just happened. I mean, this is extraordinary.
Well, my point is, it's very democratic. It's not. This is not a country where, he's running for election. Yeah. Yes. And they have, and by the way, and that's one of my big memories of our time in Romania was they have armies of election monitors. That's right.
Who fly in from all over the place.
USAID funded.
Oh yeah, very much so.
Are they having a ball?
Having a ball monitoring the elections all over Romania.
And I remember they monitored the elections, but remember we had the conversation with the election in a pub, of course.
Yes,
with the election
I remember
the Irish election monitor, and they were very, very concerned and looking to see what they could do about the rise of Vadim Tudor, the nationalist candidate. And I was going, but you're here to monitor.
Yeah. You're not meant to be doing anything about anything.
It's like you don't care. You're not supposed to.
You make sure that the ballot boxes are all out and that
they're sealed. And
it's all very correctly.
No, they were there to monitor to make sure that the Romanians elected the right person. So let's hear that. Let's roll that tape again of the outrage from the American left and the European Union. Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyone who has anything to say about Trump, ask them about this. Ask them where
a threat to democracy.
What have they had to say about that?
Yes. So I don't want, again, short story, but LA fire hydrant, Pacific Palisades burned down, Altadena burned down, 12,000 houses burned down. It turns out that there were 1,000 fire hydrants in Los Angeles broken, not working. It's 2% of the fire hydrants, but why weren't they maintained? Also, a number of them, dozens of them, were inaccessible because they were in the middle of homeless encampments. This is Los Angeles, and I'd love to know what Karen Bass thought about that. I'd love to know what she thought about it the day of the fire, but unfortunately, we don't know that because it came out over the weekend. She deleted all her text messages,
from her work phone.
Yeah,
so, that's Karen Bass for you.
So, an Irish comedian walks into Lebanon.
Oh God. I don't see this getting. I think that's
Really, that's the end of the joke. So, useful idiots. Tig, you're from the South End. How do you pronounce that? Tig, Hickey, and Tara Rayner O'Grady. She's not an Irish comedian, but she is quite comical. They accepted an all expenses paid trip from Hezbollah to attend the funeral of its assassinated leader Hassan Nasrallah.
So they accepted an invitation from a terrorist organization.
Yes. And this is the same group, by the way, that killed their fellow Irish citizen, a peacekeeper from the United Nations, Private Sean Rooney. Hezbollah killed him a couple of years ago. But Hickey, who's a self-proclaimed comedian, certainly said a lot of funny things. I don't know if he meant it. He asked if Hezbollah are terrorists. He said, they're the nicest terrorists I've ever met. They provide us with everything we need. They're on our side, helping us, giving us tea.
Tea now.
Yes.
Helping us understand Islam, taking us through the context of everything we've experienced.
Listen, a nice cup of tea goes a long way, right? It really lifts you. And he put this out on Instagram to say, I feel privileged and blessed to have been part. This is the funeral of the leader of Hezbollah. To say I feel privileged and blessed to have been part of the experience is genuinely the understatement of my life. Let's play the tape of him saying that.
I think in the West we need to have a conversation about terrorism, because if these people are terrorists, I'm telling you, they're the nicest terrorists I've ever met anyway, and I've met some very nice terrorists in the north of Ireland, I can tell you. But I do think we need to talk about terrorism because, I came over here thinking Hezbollah was a fighting group, a military group. People in the West would think that Hezbollah are a bunch of bloodthirsty terrorists who live in a shed, have monstrously evil faces, and just spend all day thinking up ways that they can torment the West. We were both wrong, because when I got here, I realised that Hezbollah is so much more than a fighting group. Hezbollah is community projects. Hezbollah is media. Hezbollah is the health sector, doctors, nurses. Hezbollah is the community, it's the people, you know? So if you're going to call the fighters terrorists, then it's important, I think, for you to at least understand the ecosystem of terrorists who work around them. You'd also then have to describe the young translators who've been working with us all week as terrorists, these extremely well-read girls who couldn't possibly do more for us. They provide us with everything we need. They're by our side, helping us, giving us tea, helping us to understand Islam.
And is he stupid, Philip, or is he was he brain damaged during an accident? Was he dropped from on by his mother on his head when he was young? Or
does he believe it? Yes, I think he believes it. He believes it. You know, he's in love. He's in love with...
Well, he likes foreign travel.
Yes.
I'm sure it's lovely. The weather over there is much better than Ireland.
It is.
It's lovely to get away from the rain.
And he loves a bit of terrorist chic, especially when it's far away and especially when it's against the Jews.
Of course.
You know, that gives you an extra little frisson. I mean, I don't know if he was around during the Troubles in Northern Ireland, but his type, they didn't like the Troubles. They didn't like the IRA, a lot of them. Some of them did now, but a lot of them didn't. And of course, it's not very nice to have terrorists on your doorstep, right? But when they're over there, and you can fly in and get the cup of tea and the nice girls talking about the Islam, and they're killing Jews. So what more would a young man need? You know,
he probably misses the days when Irish women were kind of oppressed, you see, and he's harkening back to that, and he's thinking, sure, it's lovely now. It's lovely now going out to that Islam, all those Islam.
What has Ireland lost in the modernity? Is that what you're saying, Anne?
You know, he's thinking, isn't it lovely now? The women aren't talking at all, and they've got their heads covered. In fact, the whole lot of them covered. Sure, isn't that lovely? You know, he's thinking that's what he's missing, actually. You know,
and his accompaniment is the woman who accompanied him, O'Grady, who is Jack Rayner, the actor Jack Rayner's mother.
Okay, I have no idea.
Yes, she said Nasrallah is the epitome of a wonderful leader for his people and a man of very high principles. She's asked about the atrocities Hezbollah was accused of. She said, I don't have an opinion.
I don't have an opinion, yeah.
And I love this. I didn't have to pay for my own flight. They took care of anything as soon as I arrived for my passage over. And then when she realised this might blow back on her, she told the Irish Times, I'm not certain who covered my costs. Could have been a production company as she was participating in a documentary film. I love this quote.
I've sent tickets. No, I'm sent tickets frequently, she says, without knowing who paid.
That's right.
I'm thinking, my God, she's living a very lovely life. Actually, people send her free flights to places, and she has no idea who's paid.
And when Hickey was in the middle of his love fest with Hezbollah in Islam, he told a French language newspaper that Hezbollah paid for his expenses. However, about a week later, when the Irish Times got kind of interested, he goes, I think they were, I was paid for by an offshoot of the arts and culture group in Beirut, Risalat. But of course, Risalat is basically the cultural wing of Hezbollah.
Yes.
So,
yes. In fact, I looked up about Risalat because I thought this sounds interesting, and basically their belief, so Risalat,
arts and culture,
arts and culture. So it's paid for by Iran's supreme leader Al Khamenei's belief that art is the most effective way to spread a message, a pragmatic stance rooted in the Shiite concept of maslaha, public interest, which allows flexibility in using art despite traditional Islamic reservations.
Because that was going to be my next question, like how do they justify art in an Islamic world?
Yes.
But when you want to justify the killing of Jews, everything goes.
Yeah, basically.
Good for them.
Yeah.
Listen.
Yeah. No, all paid for by Iran.
This is why we need October 7, the play, to be seen by everyone. And I have to say, I'm rather upset with some of you people out there. You're not funding this play. You're not... this is a brilliant play. It tells the truth about what happened on October 7th. We need your assistance to get it out there. It is a multitude of voices. The New York Post called compelling a reservoir for truth. Alan Dershowitz said it has to be seen by everyone on the planet.
Life-changing.
It was life-changing. So please go to October 7, the play, give what you can, and help us get the truth out there. So, Anne, you're going to tell me about ethics.
So the New York Times has a section called The Ethicist. The ethicist.
Surely,
ethicist.
I have a question.
And it has, and it's.
I have a question.
You're allowed to ask a question, Philip.
Shouldn't the whole of the New York Times actually be the ethicist? Like, are they saying this is the only ethical part of the paper?
Well, no, it's a question.
And the rest of it is unethical.
It's like a problem page. So you write to the ethicist. You write to the ethicist in the New York Times with your dilemma and you ask for advice. And the ethicist, by the way, is a NYU professor of philosophy. So here's the letter that he received recently, which I just thought I had to read this to Phelim and see what Phelim thought. And this is a college-educated white guy, and our friend Elizabeth in the room while I read this. And, you know, she's a young person and a recent graduate herself. And I'm thinking, it's quite worrying. I would find it quite worrying if this is the caliber of young man that's available out in the world. So here's the guy, and we can also look at Elizabeth and see what her reaction is to this. I'm a straight white dude.
So far, so good. Listen, what more would a young girl look for?
And recent college grad who has very progressive beliefs and is looking for a committed partner.
Sounds wonderful. Listen.
We're all in favour of that.
Yeah.
Who, in time, and this is where you start to get the worry here now, can equitably raise a family with me. Never heard of that before. Doesn't sound that romantic now. She's nodding her head to that, by the way. Elizabeth's not impressed with the equitably. She doesn't want it.
Not even. She's shaking her head.
She's shaking her head. She's going equitably. She's not in favour of the equitably raising the family. I have almost zero honest-to-goodness physical preferences. This is what he says. I've dated women of various shapes and sizes, various skin, hair, and eye colours. And I've been attracted to all of them.
I want to say something.
You can say something, Phelim, on your own podcast.
As they used to say in Barra, he's as bent as a 9-bob note.
No.
He doesn't know it.
No.
There's no... Well, I've dated women of all various shapes and sizes, various skin colours, hair and eye colours, and I've been attracted to all of them. No, you're lying. You're not attracted to any of them.
Okay, well, we'll hold that thought of yours there, Phelim, and I want to continue with this because this is getting to the nub of the situation with this guy.
Bent as a 9-bob note, as they used, as homophobic people would say, he's as bent as a 9-bob note.
Not that you'd say that.
No, I'm obviously saying it.
You're saying it in a kind of an ironic way.
I'm not saying this is appalling that people would say he's as bent as a 9-bob note.
And now, I think you've said it 4 times now, so I think hopefully this is the end of it. So here he continues. Here's what's controversial among my friends. I want to prioritise, and this is now, Elizabeth's going to look very upset about this. I want to prioritise dating women of colour. Let's just let you know, Elizabeth is not a woman of colour. I'm after a cross-cultural relationship.
Ooh.
That's what he's looking for.
Cross-cultural. Okay.
I believe very strongly that one of the main ways to combat racism is through relationships. Part of me thinks that I will always be somewhat disappointed if what I end up with becomes one of the most important relationships in my life is with another white person. If someone is a woman of colour, that checks a box for me in a real way. I am seeking to be an anti-racist in all my relationships. Part of the reason that I prioritise it is to combat implicit bias. Having grown up in a fairly white, quasi-rural place, rural country, rural, bad. I am dedicated to educating myself on issues of racism, sexism, and other forms of, are you ready for this one now? I haven't been in university for a very long time, so this is a new word to me. Chiracy. Did I say it, Phelim, right?
Hold on.
Hierarchy.
Kyriarchy. Have you looked this up, Anne?
I will, and I will tell you now what hierarchy means. Hierarchy is from a feminist theologian, Elizabeth Schlussler Fiorenza, and designates interconnected systems of domination on the basis of gender, race, religion, and other identities. Part of the reason that I prioritise it is to combat implicit bias. Having grown up in a fairly white, quasi-rural place, I am dedicated to educating myself on issues of racism, sexism, and other forms of hierarchy, while also learning from marginalised people. For me, principles lead the way to attractions. I start by eating a food or adopting a habit because it's good for me. And after trying it enough times, I find I really like it for what it is. The same applies to people I'm considering dating.
Is that not cultural appropriation? adopting a food from another culture and liking it.
Both I and my hypothetical partner of
Listen,
colour.
Of course, it's hypothetical. No one wants to go near this chap.
Both I and my hypothetical partner of colour would be choosing more learning and less comfort to put forth greater effort and practice more listening than we otherwise would in a culturally homogenous, committed relationship.
Because
can I just say how far this is removed from my dating habits when I was in college, and that my priorities were rather more earthy. Let's put it that way. I think that sounds almost pure for a moment there. Anyway, let's listen, go on. And one of the main ways that I hope to combat racism individually is by leveraging my own privilege, economic, family connections, education, for people of colour, including any biracial children we bring into this world.
Feed the world.
Here's my question. Despite my well-meaning anti-racist principles, I'm not sure about them being well-meaning, by the way, sir. Is this preference, as friends have suggested, wrong, insensitive, or somehow itself racist? So that guy has been to university, by the way, which if any...
Of course he has. Of course he has.
Can I just finish this point by saying that if you want an advertisement for why not to send a child to university, there's your advertisement right there.
Yeah.
You could do that to your beautiful child whose brain is probably intact because of the influence of you having that child at home, could be exposed to that way of thinking, could become that awful person there if you let him out of your house, and as opposed to letting him become a plumber or anything other than that. And by the way, I just want to give you a taste of what the ethicist had to say to this. The ethicist, professor of philosophy at NYU. Mm-hmm. Your devotion to self-improvement is impressive. Like a dish of quinoa and kale that you may once have forced down and now actively enjoy, a woman of colour could, you think, raise your game, supplying something like anti-racist roughage. You'd be using your erotic ecumenism to level up. Where your shallower classmates have hookups, your dates would be teach-ins. Do the work, the slogan urges, and you're rolling up your sleeves.
But that's because that's what women really want. They really want their dates to be teachings.
They really do.
Yes, they
do.
Wooed with a lecture, a 15-minute lecture before the appetizer, and
the
erotic, follow-up seminar.
I definitely like the phrase erotic ecumenism, but not, but yeah. So this is the world, this is the crazy world we're living in. And I do remember a friend of ours, Phil, a very good friend of ours who had a baby. And I remember her saying that she really, really wished, her biggest wish for him, that he'd never go to university. And I really get that. Yes. I get that sentiment now. So we're coming to the end of the show. As you know, before next week, it will be St. Patrick's Day. So for those of you preparing for St. Patrick's Day, you may want to have friends over to your house. And just to let you know that what is served in America is never, ever, ever served in Ireland. Not that that's anything wrong with that, by the way. But this thing that they call, what is it they call it here?
Boiled.
What's that thing that you have?
Cabbage.
What's that thing called?
Something in cabbage.
Something in cabbage. Corned beef. This corned beef thing of which you speak, no one's ever heard of it in Ireland. They have no idea what it is.
No, it's not corned beef.
It's called corned beef. That's what they call it. Yeah, it's corned beef, they call it.
But we
don't have that in Ireland.
Never had it.
We won't have it. We won't have it. We won't have it in our houses. We don't allow it
it's
now.
Not allowed.
Not allowed because we don't even know what it is.
None of that there.
So what we have in Ireland, by the way, there is a thing called boiled bacon and cabbage, which, it's an acquired taste. It's actually not an acquired taste. It's actually grand if it's made well, and I can do that. But this is not what this recipe is. So I'm going to give you this recipe, which is, it's a shepherd's pie recipe. Highly, highly recommend it. Really, really yummy. And what's very funny about it is that people in Ireland make this all the time, shepherd's pie. As the title might indicate, it's normally and meant to be made with lamb. However, the people who make shepherd's pie in Ireland never make it with lamb. They make it with beef. And so, and you know what? I'm not turning into a vegan or anything, but I do think part of my issue with lamb is... I don't know if we've mentioned this in the podcast before, but Phelim can talk to sheep. Did you know that? I remember staying in a hotel one time with Phelim, and he opened up the window and he saw the sheep in the distance, and he went, "Bah, bah." I'm no good at doing it, but he does it. They came running. They came running from all over the place. It's quite disturbing, actually.
That's what happens when you live in a country with more sheep than people.
Let's go over to that. Let's go over to the recipe right now. You know, you'll see here quite a lot of ingredients to make this meal happen, and obviously the recipe is going to be up on the website, unreportedstorysociety.com. Go to there, and you'll find all our recipes there. By the way, you need lots of things for this. So potatoes. You know, start with your potatoes. You quarter them, peel them and quarter them. I never peel potatoes, but I did on this occasion, and it was worth it. Peel them and quarter them, and you know, throw in about a teaspoon or tablespoon of salt in with them, and bring them to a boil. They'll take about 15 to 20 minutes to cook. Okay, when your potatoes are done, when your potatoes have come to a boil, I'm gonna do it through this way. I'm just going to tell you how we made the recipe, and then you can look up all the ingredients. As I said, that on the website. But
what's the website? Unreported Stories.
Society.com, and you'll go to the podcast, and then under the podcast are all the recipes. So drain those potatoes and mash them, and we added to them cream and a lot of cheddar cheese that had been left over from the weekend. We had relatives staying, and they left us lots of food in the fridge. So I had all this cheddar cheese that had been already shredded. So throw that in there, and actually yum, 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 yum. We did really enjoy that. Then what you want to do is melt about 2 tablespoons of butter in a large oven-safe skillet. You can see the skillet that I use there. And add onion, chopped up onion, carrot, garlic, thyme, rosemary, and cook, stirring often with a wooden spoon until the onions are translucent and the carrots are just tender. That takes about 10 minutes. I'm just going to stop for a second and just say this is a great recipe. Honestly, we haven't had shepherd. I can't believe I haven't made shepherd's pie on this podcast before. This is a really nice recipe. This was really, really yummy. Anyway, add the beef. I mean, funny, when I chose to do this recipe, I thought, it's very simple. It's incredibly simple, but it's just a little involved. It takes a little bit of time.
It's not.
It's not instant.
No.
So break up the meat with a spoon, and again, have not all that frying off until everything is no longer pink.
It may be comfort food, but it's not comfortable making it.
Then season your meat then with pepper and salt, and add the tomato paste. Quite a bit of tomato paste you can see there being added, and cook that until it's all well combined. Another 2 or 3 minutes. Then sprinkle some flour. I think it was about a tablespoon or 2 tablespoons of flour. Then cook that for a minute. Then add the beef stock. Cook that. You see, there's a lot of stopping, and keep cooking that until the liquid's basically all thickened up a bit. Then, very secret, very important ingredient, Worcestershire sauce. Worcestershire sauce from Worcestershire. Mm-hmm. And don't say that very quickly after consuming a lot of drink on St. Patrick's Day.
Is it Worcester sauce or Worcestershire? Isn't it?
I would say Worcestershire sauce. Anyway, again, don't be asking me to over say that. Really full of fabulous flavour. Gorgeous. Then, because you haven't, and Phelim was questioning me about this, because you haven't taken the thyme leaves off the thyme, which is really difficult, or with the rosemary, all you have to do is then at this point just remove the thyme, remove the rosemary. You'll pick them out really easily, and then stir in basically a cup of chopped up parsley,
which is a lot of
which
parsley.
Seemed like a lot, but you know what? Unbelievable.
Didn't do any harm. Did a lot of good.
Then what you want to do is you're going to get your potato mixture, and you're going to just pat that down on top. You're going to dollop it down on top of your meat, and then spread it out using the forks of love, as our friend said. Basically, spread that out all over the top. And what is great was we were bringing that over to a friend's house, and so actually at that point you can stop. You can take a pause now with the making of that, and just let it sit there for a while. And then when you're ready to have, you're ready to eat your dinner, put that into a preheated oven of about 350 for about 30 minutes, and you'll know it's done when you see it bubbling up at the sides, and when the top has taken on a nice little kind of a nice colouring of brown. And if it hasn't, then you want to put it under the broiler,
or as we say in the rest of the world, the grill.
Yeah, what we call a grill in Ireland, and it's a very, very nice recipe. I highly recommend it. So that's the recipe for this week, and I know maybe I should get back in the kitchen.
Should we tell people why we believe corned beef
became the thing in America?
We think that it's the Irish were living in New York and such places cheek by jowl with the Jewish community, and they picked up some of their better food and incorporated it into the Irish
And it could have been a thing where the Jews and the Irish, who were both kind of marginalized, let's say,
Yes.
in life, became pals. And the Irish realized, oh, well, the Jews can't be having this boiled cabbage and ham thing
Yes.
of which the Irish speak of. So they actually then got them to try this, what do we call it
Beef.
again? What do they call it
Corn-
again?
corned
This
beef.
corned beef thing of which you speak, which we don't know anything about
Yeah.
because we've never heard of
No,
it
it's
in
the other way
Ireland.
around. The Jews were eating the corned beef, and the Irish goes, "That's nice. We love that."
Could be.
Yeah. Who knows? Who knows? So
We had some comments from last week.
yes. Oh yeah, we're going to do so. We read all your comments, every
do.
one of
We
your
do.
comments.
We are those people.
We try and comment on every one of your comments. So we got some from last week. We talked about Gavin Newsom on his sudden come to Jesus moment, so to speak, on transgender girls and sport and all. Transgender men pretending to be women in sport. And Robin Lynn 66 says, "Don't trust him. He will say whatever you want to hear. He wants the presidency in 2028. We can't afford to let him get in." I
Yes.
agree 100%.
100%. She's right.
I think, last week I asked the question, why are trans people so violent? There's just an enormous, because we did the story about the trans serial killing gang.
And a lot of people
gang of trans serial killers.
And a lot of people in the comments basically said that, amazing story and amazing that they hadn't heard of it
Never-
anywhere else.
Yes. Go back and look at last week's podcast. There's a group of trans vegans roaming the country, murdering people. They've murdered 4, possibly more people. And it's only that they've been caught that they're... And by the way, some of them have not been charged with murder and maybe getting out of prison very shortly. Someone wrote in, I said, why are they so violent? Because trans does seem to have a violent streak to it. And Alyssa again said, the increased violence might be because of the synthetic hormones in their systems. That's my theory anyway. Real hormones can be hard to control at times. I imagine synthetic hormones may be difficult to handle too. That plus the use of other daily drugs likely to contribute to increased violence. She said it's worth thinking about. I mean, obviously they're not well in the head anyway.
Yeah.
So, look, we do love the comments. We're going to read more of them next week, probably read them earlier in the show. Please keep commenting. Please let us know what you think, who you'd like to have on as a guest.
Yes.
And we will see you next week.
And have a great St. Patrick's Day.
Yes.
Enjoy it wherever you are or however. And by the way, we also don't drink green beer in Ireland.
Yes, we take our beer seriously.
We take our beer very seriously.
If you're Irish,
come into the parlour. There's a welcome there for you.
Music fades out. If your name is O'Flaherty or Pat, as long as you're from Ireland, there's a welcome on the mat.
Okay, enough.
Music,
Stop.
Music fades out. Bye.
Bye-bye.